Okay, this evening I'm here with James Goodwin. How you doing, James?
Very good, thank you, Will.
Good, good. And I will definitely slip into calling you Goody. I'll start out with good intentions about calling you James, and then I don't think I ever really even managed to do that when I was in school with you. So
That's okay, mate. That's okay.
So, people watching this may have already seen my conversation with your good friend Rupert Scott. Last week I had the conversation. It'll be online as well. But you were in the same year group as Ru at school. And so, like him, it's pretty much 16 years and 2 months since you first played volleyball when you were in year 7. And I kind of walked into a sports hall at Madeley and kind of showed you this strange sport called volleyball. So
yeah, mate.
Go on. What were your first impressions then of the sport?
Yeah, it's funny. I think the first time I actually played any kind of volleyball was on a year 7 trip to France in Brittany, which is like the classic, maybe high school year 7 trip. And I just remember playing out on a beach somewhere around the Calais area. Can't even remember where it was now, but I think that's the first time I ever really played. And then I think it must have been. So when was that? That following, we would have been end of year 7 when we started, maybe start of year 8. I forget now, but I think it must have been the end of year 7, and then that was the first time we probably really played. And I just really enjoyed it. Was pretty baggage at football and a couple of other sports, so volleyball I took to a little bit quicker.
Yeah. So you were. Would you have thought, when you look back on your life now, you're 27 now, look back, would you have counted yourself as a sporty kid when you were in year 7, but just not particularly, you haven't found your sport, or what? Where were you?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed like watching a lot of sports when I was quite young, and like I always had that. I didn't play a huge amount kind of when I was really young, like a lot of guys like Rue and a couple of other mates that I went to primary school with. They did a lot of different stuff, but I never really kind of got into that, and then probably wasn't really until I started playing volleyball that I think I found a bit more athleticism and could do other sports in PE without being too terrible. So volleyball definitely gave me a good athletic base for some other things as well. I just started playing golf actually, and I'm pretty bad at that, but it's getting better. So,
well, your strength and conditioning, physicality will definitely help you with your golf. And one of our friends in common through both volleyball and the work that you did at EIS and are now doing, Barry Shillerbeer, he's taken himself into golf as well. So something you two can connect over at some point. But I'm not sure whether
it's a wise choice. I'm definitely not that good yet either, but we'll see.
So my memory of you, like when you were 13, let's say, is that you were dead springy. You had a massive jump, and you were pretty good at reading the ball and understanding where the ball would move to. And it was because of those things, you found yourself towards being a passer hitter. Did that ever feel? That's the only position you've ever really been, isn't it?
Yeah, like other than the odd game here and there, I've really ever only really played as a passer hitter. But it was strange. It just kind of I really enjoyed attacking from like quite a young age, and I think if you do that, you immediately lean towards one of kind of those wing attacking positions, like especially when you're really new to the game and it's the easiest ball to learn to attack, and the timing's a lot easier to get a grasp of. So I think it was always probably going to be that, and I've never really done much else. Like I said, I played the odd.
Oh, you've cut out, mate. Oh, we just had to pause then because the gremlins got in the way. So you were just basically saying, I think you were saying you had to go at a couple of other positions once or twice, but it all felt quite natural to you. Okay, so the sharp-witted of you watching will now see we're in a completely different location, so we've got a bit better internet. I think I was about to move on and kind of say, so what are your best memories of playing volleyball when you were high school age?
I think the best memories are probably winning the national titles. I mean, there's probably no better feeling than managing to do it on the day, and especially to do it a couple of times, was a lot of fun. Just such good times with my mates. Two of my best mates, who I still speak to and hang out with these days. It's just, it was such a cool experience, and I think one of those kind of really key early memories for me for the sport.
Yeah. Can you remember anything specific about any of them in particular?
Bits and bobs. To be honest, a lot of the specific points I would say are probably long gone. I remember in the under-15s one. I don't think you were there. I think it was your dad.
I had to go.
Coaching,
I had to go after the semi-final to go and play. Devastating.
Yeah, I remember you had a game, and I'm sure. I feel like we won the first set and then lost the second, and then absolutely battered them in the third.
Yeah.
And I remember that just in terms of really trying to pick ourselves out of the hole from the second set, and just that being quite a big emotional kind of moment. God, the others are so kind of bare. Like the under-16s in Sheffield, that was pretty fun. I can kind of remember. I only really remember it really well is because I remember my parents had come to watch the game, and they really struggled to make any games because they run a pub and restaurant, so it was like one of the only ones that they ever really came to. So I remember that one. But so in terms of specific moments, pretty sparse. But
so I remember in the under-16 one. It's funny you say about your parents, because the team played really excellently that day, and we won 3-0 in a National Cup final. So it's kind of dream stuff, and it was the first time the club had ever won the National Under-16s for boys, which is amazing given they'd won everything else. But you had a few memorable moments in that game. It's like you dived through a Toblerone at the side of the court. You spiked a ball over the net from sat down.
Yeah, I think I basically shanked a pass and then ended up like kind of rolling towards, and suddenly the ball just came back to me, and I was lying flat on my back and somehow managed to spike the ball back over the net. But it was all it was such a rush and such a blur. But I'm sure actually someone got it on video.
Yeah, I think it is on it. It'll be somewhere. I'll look it up afterwards.
Amazing.
But because that's
probably my most heroic volleyball moment.
It was very heroic. Is that? Did you feel? It's like 11, 12 years ago now. But did it feel any different having your parents there at the game?
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Yeah, that was really quite special. And like, I remember speaking to my mum after. She was like, "Oh, I'm so happy that we came to watch." And yeah, she was chuffed a bit. She was like, "Oh, I was a bit confused because I started cheering sometimes and I didn't realise that you actually lost the point." So I think for her, sport in general is a bit of an experience. But yeah, that was really cool. It was nice to have my parents there. And I mean, I spent so much time with Rue in that part of my childhood, and Will, and a couple of the other guys that I really adopted. All their parents became sort of my kind of parental network as well. Definitely from a sports point of view. So it was really nice to have my mum there.
Well, you were a really close knit group of lads. That age group. It was a very special one for me to be able to be part of. And you went on and ended up winning the under-18s twice as well. So you're one of very few people actually who got the full set of 4, which is pretty awesome. But you also got into the England setup in cadets and juniors. How was that?
Yeah, no, that was again great. I think I went to my first cadet camp. God, I would have either been 14 or 15, I think. But the first time you kind of represent your country is quite a special feeling. Definitely quite a nervous feeling as well. The real first time you're feeling it for sure. But yeah, I mean that was such a cool experience, and definitely one that'll live with me for quite a while. Like having gone on from cadets, cadets is really cool because it's quite a stepping stone into trying to take a step from junior into kind of adult volleyball. And kind of when you start playing at juniors, game gets a lot quicker, and certainly on the international level, the teams that we were playing were a lot bigger, a lot more power, and that was a real kind of important experience, definitely from a sporting point of view. in terms of my involvement in the sport of volleyball and becoming a better volleyball player. I think I remember playing, I think one tournament we did as a juniors, it was one of the qualifyings for like the European Cup. We ended up playing like, it was like Belgium, Germany, I think it was Latvia. I can't remember who the fourth team was. I think it was like Holland or the Netherlands or something like that. I remember playing in that, and just the level was like, geez, this is insane. Really, really is insane. So yeah, it was a really special experience. Yeah, really great.
One of the things you reflected on then was the kind of the transition from cadet to junior, and Rupert said exactly the same thing last week about the physicality and the height and the power, which like, you're not a big guy. What are you? What height are you?
I would say I would like to think 6 foot in shoes, but you know, we all know that's not true.
Yeah, you're the same as me, so not 6 foot.
Probably more like 5'10", 5'11", yeah.
But you have a tremendous jump, and without wanting to sound unkind, you were never the most powerful hitter, but you always had the height from your jump as a young junior player. And I think it's quite interesting now, knowing what you do for a living, which I haven't talked about in this conversation yet, but James is, what are you, head S&C for the Swiss rowing programme?
So I work as the head of physical performance and sports science. So anything from, mainly the main part of the role is leading on the strength and conditioning delivery, but also I kind of have another part of the role which is heavily invested in the pure physical performance of the guys. And like, because I work with the Swiss rowing team, that's quite a big deal from a rowing perspective because of the fact that so much of the sport is physiologically determined.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of my main job role.
And you are award winning in that as well. So I'm not going to let, I'm immensely proud of you guys, and I'm not going to let you kind of just play that kind of stuff down. You've done an amazing job, and the role you're doing, I hope you chuck in a few silver medal winning performances next year in Tokyo. For obvious reasons, why they'll be silver.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
So going back to where I was, because that was my clumsy way of kind of saying what you do now. If you had the professional skill, if you were you now and you were looking at you as a 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old, what advice would you be giving to you to get yourself more physically prepared to play volleyball?
I think I definitely would have taken, I think at that age, I definitely didn't have the understanding of how impactful any kind of physical training could be. I think, I guess that's a little bit of kind of naivety at that age, but the sport of elite men's volleyball is extremely physical. And if you're going to make it to the top and, you're not already hugely athletically gifted, that's going to take a lot of hard work. And I think if I was speaking to myself again, I'd definitely give myself a nudge in terms of, look, this can really give you a boost into the right direction for the sport. So I think that's what I'd be telling myself really, is to understand that as we go up in the levels, it's going to get more physically demanding, and you can get a little head start now and really make some progress for yourself. Yeah.
And okay. And that kind of rings true, I think, for a lot of people. There's quite a few people I think get or are nervous about introducing any kind of strength training in teenagers as they're growing up. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's kind of a bit of, I would say it's a bit of a myth that went round for a long time, that any kind of resistance training for a young athlete is detrimental. I think most of the research and the evidence actually shows the complete opposite to that, which is, if anything, it can be extremely helpful. We can look at performance, we can talk about jump height, we can talk about hitting hard, but the fundamental impact that resistance training has on youth athletes, and we can include youth volleyball players in that, is being healthy. And we know as a volleyball athlete, we jump a lot. We tend to have problems with ankles, knees, shoulders, and in order to deal with the volume of that we do within the sport and the amount of training that we do, then resistance training is definitely a pathway to helping us manage that and being a healthier athlete and being able to not miss as much court time and
Yeah.
you know, be able to consistently perform at a higher level. That's also really important.
Yeah, and you know, things like, without going overboard on the weights and being silly when people aren't either mentally mature enough or
Yeah.
physically ready to be silly, you know, real good focus on technique to get those neuromuscular pathways concreted in with some good technique, you know, good for bone density, good around the growth plates. You know, there's a whole host of things, and it's one of those things I think that, you know, God, I'm nearly 40 now, and I look back on when I was a teenager, it was just not encouraged whatsoever.
Yeah, I think it, you know, I was, when I first went to the National Volleyball Academy, that's when I kind of first started doing any meaningful training in the gym. And, you know, even then I was probably not quite kind of mature enough to appreciate the impact it had. And it wasn't until I went to university where I started to really see some benefit from, you know, in my own kind of volleyball performance from training in the gym. And I think for a lot of people, it does, like, if you're a bit of an outsider to that kind of environment, you kind of look at it and go, oh, it's just guys wanting to get bigger and it's macho, and like you just develop this image that's not really probably accurate to it. And you know, the key thing for strength and conditioning in volleyball is kind of how you described it. It's got to be progressive. It's got to, you know, you got to start with those kind of basics, learn those movement patterns, learn that technique, you know, find someone who's well trained in the field to help kind of guide you through, and that will really take you a long way as you get a bit more experienced. And you know, there's no reason why you can't start doing any resistance training when you're, you know, mature enough to be in a weight room. So
yeah, and it's interesting, you know, when I've spoken to Brad Azad and Bradbury about serve reception, and a lot of the stuff he was talking about really was, you know, ultimately was about strength across your shoulders and across your back to hold the platform, and to have a strong platform, you know, your core holding it in place and being there for the ball to rebound off you. When I was chatting to Rupert, a lot of it was about, you know, getting your body in the right position, being strong in your core to then use your levers to deliver the ball. And it's all around conditioning, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And like, and you know, Brad is really absolutely bang on that front. Like, you can't technically execute a skill sometimes unless you've got the physical condition to do it. And like, even in the sport I work in now as rowers, like we talk about that a lot. Like, you can have the right rowing technique, that's fine, but do you have the physical capacity to repetitively hold that technique over and over again? That's really, really critical. And volleyball's no different there. You know, you might be able to hit a perfect set 1 time out of 10, but you don't have necessarily the capacity in your trunk or your core, or, you know, the right condition your wrist to be able to repeatedly deliver that. So that's where SSC really comes in to make some impact.
And your 1 out of 10 thing is a really, really sparked something in my head where you can almost progress from being like, hey, he's a good warm-up hitter, lads, don't worry about him, to being those kind of players that you have in like Div 2, Div 3 of the National League, where you have that one player on the team and like, yeah, but they've got this guy, and then when they come up against a higher level opposition in the cup or something, that guy does produce it maybe 3 out of 10, but then he's under pressure and the skill breaks down. And it's quite interesting how you could chart that kind of physical development and maturity against the level of performance as possible.
Yeah, hugely. I think that is also a thing that people underestimate, is like, yes, we want to jump higher and hit the ball harder and, you know, have more capacity to play the game, but like, the impact of physical training on technique is also really important. Like, it's very physically demanding. If you want to hit the ball at your kind of highest point and make contact as high as possible, that's quite physically tough. And there's a lot of things from your hand all the way down to your feet that can break down, that don't have the condition to be able to put you in the right place. So it's important that you find where that kind of weak link is and make sure you really develop it. So it's not going to be a weak link, it's going to be a strong link.
But we were talking in the summer when we were peppering together, weren't we? And I kind of said to you, with my age banging on, I spend more time now focused on my physical conditioning and preparation to do any sport than I did when I was younger and could exploit it more. Now it's so that I can walk the next day. Like, so it definitely catches up with you with age if you don't. You know, I know if I didn't look after myself, I would not be anywhere near a volleyball court now. So
100%. I'm definitely feeling that way. I mean, I think I tried to make a mini comeback a couple of years ago and then blew out my ACL all the way in Southampton. Had to trek my way home, but it was definitely a good year and a half, 2 years of rehab to get myself in the right place. And you can't do that just by training the sport alone. I had to spend a lot of time in the gym and rebuild a lot of muscle around my calf, around my quad to get my knee in a position where it felt comfortable to jump and play again. And now I kind of barely notice it. So
yeah, well, when you came and joined us for a session, you were in great shape, and I think probably hitting the ball as hard as you ever have done. I was a bit gutted you're over in Switzerland, to be honest. But there we go. So we
could have done with some better shoes, but never mind.
Yeah. Don't comment on that. We kind of charted your career and your development almost up to the point where you went off to uni, and you went to Sheffield, which was at that time the national programme. I think there was Leeds Carnegie was bubbling under, coming up, wasn't it? And there was stuff around. Oh no, Carnegie was just finishing, wasn't it, for you around that time?
Yeah,
and
so
was emerging.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. So I think it was Carnegie were kind of winning quite well. Kind of dominating the past few seasons around then, and then I think they maybe had one more season in my first year of uni where they were pretty good, and then they kind of disappeared after that, and then Northumbria started kind of cropping up.
Yeah, but did you go? So you went to Sheffield, prestigious program, great coach, fantastic technical coach, really, really talented, proper players. Did you go with a view to thinking, right, I'm pursuing volleyball, or were you then? I know I'm good at volleyball. I've played for England under 19 level. I now want to knuckle down and get a career. Where were you when you went there?
Yeah, it's funny because I wasn't sure. Like from an academic point of view, I was always pretty good at maths, and after I kind of finished my A levels in Loughborough, I'd done maths, I'd done biology and psychology, and I didn't really want to do either of those things as a standalone. That really didn't appeal to me at all. And sports science was kind of the thing that combined the things that I liked the most, which was, playing, watching sport, and some interest in science and mathematics. So I was always going to do sports science. Where that was going to be, I wasn't too sure at the point, but I was still enjoying playing volleyball. And I don't think I really spoke about this much, but I remember speaking to my dad and then my mum about it, just in terms of like, look, you should just go and enjoy and kind of do what you want to do. And at that point, I wanted just to play volleyball and have a good time, and everything just kind of fit together with that. And I didn't necessarily have a goal of like, right, I'm going to use this as a catapult to be a pro player, or right, I'm done with volleyball, I'm just going because that's the right move, or whatever. There wasn't really a thought process around that. I just kind of went following what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I ended up there.
No, that's really, really helpful. And you went to Hallam, which is one of the great things I've always thought about Hallam, particularly seeing you guys come through, actually, is the commitment to the practical side of the science. I went to Loughborough.
Yeah.
Loughborough's far more classroom. You're in the lab, but you're not then going into a practical space unless you really, well, they might have changed it by now, but it was definitely, you had to force yourself almost to get the practical in-service stuff. But you were fortunate that Hallam taught in that kind of way, and you ended up doing a work placement at the English Institute of Sport, or with the English Institute of Sport, I should say, rather than at it. Or I think you were in the building, but you kind of got the chance to do some S&C, I think, as part of that placement, and then the rest is history.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think kind of going what you said about Sheffield, like that was one of the best things about that uni, was that the course that I was on was very focused in terms of getting people in and around sports jobs. It had, when you actually looked at the stats off the back of it, the percentage of people that actually found employment in sport was one of the top in the country from sport and exercise science degrees. And I think it was probably at the time only a top 20 uni for sports science. I'm not sure what it is now, but I like looking back at some of the guys in my class, like, I've gone to do quite a good career in sport. There's another couple of guys who have also gone on to the institute, another SSC coach who works with boxing, a nutritionist who's working with Brit Athletics. And like there was a whole heap of us within my year group alone that actually went on to do proper applied sports science jobs, which was really cool. And yeah, I think that was definitely a really good marker. And yeah, I was really fortunate that I ended up securing a placement with the EIS. I did like a 6-week one in my second year as part of a mandatory placement, and then after I graduated, I did like a 6-month kind of internship, and that allowed me to kind of gain some employment off the back of that. And that was really helpful. I was very quickly exposed to some very high level athletes, and not just kind of there and sitting, but to get involved in the coaching process and to really get a deep understanding of how those guys work and how you support these guys at that level was really useful, and it made a huge difference to my career. I definitely wouldn't be anywhere near where I am now without it.
Do you think it helped you having been an England under-19 international yourself?
Yeah, huge. I think when you've played sport at a decent level, you develop a lot of skills, and it sounds a little bit cliche, but I really do think they hold true. You get a lot from a leadership perspective. You learn a lot about how people operate and how to communicate and interact with that people, and that is absolutely paramount within my job. And I don't think that's too dissimilar to many other workplaces out there. Sport really teaches you a lot of kind of social empathy around that. You start to understand how people want to be treated, how they operate, how you learn very quickly how you maximize the most out of them. And I think that's a really critical skill. And I don't think I'd have that ability so quickly without playing sport at a good level.
Well, you're clearly doing an exceptional job with what you're doing over in Switzerland. I look forward always to when you drop in on as a Madeley, or we get the chance to catch up. But for now, Goody, sincere thanks for giving us some of your time tonight.
Yeah, no problem, mate. Thanks for having me.
No, real pleasure.